Now we're going to take a look at conditional redirects. Now you might argue that we've already been looking at conditional redirects. After all, redirects happen on the condition of deciding which incoming URL route we want to route from and then dictating which one we'd like that to go to. So there is a condition, I guess, there already. But in Netlify redirects, we have a few different parameters, and one of those are conditions. A good place to look are the Netlify docs on docs.netlify.com. And if you go to the redirects here, you can actually start to see some of the options in our configuration that we've already been using. We've been using the from, the to, the status, a few other things along the way here. And now we're going to be looking at conditions. So a conditional redirect will have to satisfy certain conditions that will specify our configuration in order to execute that redirect. Why would we do that? Well, this is great for if we want to have localization and internationalization in our site. So in our now familiar Vaporium site, what we're going to do is we're going to start adding some localized content into this site and then routing people to it based on the language that they've got their browser set to. So the place we'll start is the store page. Now at the moment there is no store page. We've moved the store page to a new URL. We've moved it to a couple of different URLs. We have one for the English version of the page, which is what we've been looking at before. And we have another which is for a Spanish version of the page, which is the same thing, just translated into Spanish. Now, behind the scenes, we have a couple of different store pages being output to our dist folder, where we can then go off and find them in our ES store index file or the EN store index file. This is a very common pattern for generating sites that have lots of localized content. Static site generators are great at abstracting the data from the templates, and content strings are no different to that. So we've got a very simplistic version of this in here, but ultimately what we want to be able to do is generate these different localized pages so that we can start routing traffic to those accordingly. How will we do that? Well, we're going to start to add some more redirect rules. So let's start shaping the traffic. People who are coming into the store page, we want to route them to a Spanish version of the page, which lives on that URL. We'll do that with the status of 302, so we'll do a temporary redirect for now. And we're going to do that only if the following conditions are true. Now, this is the TOML format for this. What we're going to do here is we're going to say that we're going to look for the language, and for that to satisfy one of the following. So it's going to equal one of the following array items, and this is going to be the language string in the user's browser. So Netlify's CDN, Netlify's Edge network, exposes some of these headers to the redirects engine. So it exposes the language, it also exposes the location and other few bits and pieces besides. So we're going to be looking first of all for the language, and if it matches this, if it's the Spanish language header, we will send the traffic that has come in on this URL to this different URL. So let's save that. The site is already running with Netlify dev locally. Let's go back to the browser and let's see if that has taken effect. Well, if I hit that, first of all, no, it hasn't taken effect. I still go straight through to the store URL, which currently isn't being served. And that's because I have English set as my language on my system. I have a little browser extension here that lets me change the language just for the purpose of testing and demonstrations. So I'll set my language header to Spanish. And in fact, it's reloaded the page immediately behind the scenes. And you can see now it's redirected me. Let's just hit that once more time explicitly so we can see that happening. Yeah, and it's redirecting to the Spanish language version of the site. These URLs, I haven't translated the URLs underneath these, just the language, so we can navigate around. And the only page that I'm currently translating is the store page, but we can see that's redirecting as appropriate. What then if I change this back again? If I change this back to English and go to the store page, we can see I've still got this problem of there is no page beneath that. So we've got a couple of options there. Well, first of all, we could just duplicate this, and then for the English language users, we could set an explicit rule that takes them there. The other thing, of course, we could do is we could provide a catch-all. So if there were no conditions met, so there are no conditions there, so irrespective of what the language settings are in the browser, then we'll have a default that falls back to this English language page as well. So let's take a look here. I think perhaps now if I just reload, yeah, there we are. So now store for me will redirect to the English version of the page because I'm in English there. If I once again toggle through to Spanish and go to the store page, it's redirected me to the Spanish page. And if I choose some other language, let's say Indonesian, what's going to happen here when we navigate to the store page? Yes, it defaults to the English page. So here we are with the redirects specified here in the TOML. It can be useful to not specify all of these languages here, but actually use them in our redirects configuration file. You may recall that we've got two places we can specify redirects, either here or in within a file that we serve as part of the site itself. So I'm going to actually take those out and we'll re-implement those by putting them into our site. We'll create a new file, redirects, which is going to get built into our dist folder as well. I think we'll probably see it there already. There it is, blank at the moment. But we can do the exact same operation as we did before, but we can do that here. And I quite like to do this here because this is also a config file which can get generated by your build. So we can implement the same exact thing here in the redirects file. Let's say anyone who's visiting the store page will go to the Spanish version of the store page. We'll do that with the 301. And that's for anyone who's visiting with a language set to Spanish. Now we could do as many as we like here. We could specify Portuguese, specify as many languages as we like here, comma separated. Those will all satisfy that rule and have the same action as we just saw in the TOML file. I like to do this here because you can well imagine this is the kind of thing that you could put in some kind of for loop in whatever your templating languages here that generates this, and perhaps this could be abstracted into whatever language you have. So you might have a list of many languages and many abstracted language string files that you're using in your site generator to output these various different pages along the way. This is a helpful way of also then being able to generate the redirects configuration. So if you're supporting maybe dozens of languages in your build, you can generate this automatically as well. Go back to our TOML file. But let's reinstate what we just had a moment ago. Yeah, so we do also have the option of not doing 302s. We might want to do 200s. So what would be the result if we did 200s? Well, you may recall this results in a redirect, but I'm going to deploy this as well. Let's also just demonstrate this getting deployed to Netlify. Deploy. Have this set up as a site already. So if we send that to our site gets deployed. The redirects are propagated to the CDN. What happens if we go to the store page? Well, we are served the English version. Now we haven't been redirected to the /en version of the site because we're rewriting now rather than redirecting. I've gone to the English version because although I'm set to Indonesian, it will default to the English version in the background. Let's also look at Spanish. So again, now we've seen the Spanish content being proxied or rewritten rather to this URL. So this works nicely as well, and it means that it maintains the same URLs. However, it does mean that it's more difficult for users to choose different languages and address different language versions of the site based on the URL. It's also worth noting that that these conditions can also be satisfied not just from the language settings in the user's browser. We can also detect the country or language not just from the header that's been detected by the Netlify Edge network, the CDN, but in fact these can also be specified in a cookie as well. So Netlify's redirects engine will detect the country or the language header that's being included in the request, Or indeed, if there is an NF and Netlify lang or an NF Netlify country cookie being passed in, we will honor that as well. So it means that you'll be able to apply the same kind of routing rules based either on the header value, or if there's a cookie value, it will do that as well. This is great for being able to offer people the option to choose which language they want to browse the store on. So you can have country or language selectors as well. So this is how you can start adding conditions to your redirects, so you can choose routes based on conditions such as language settings, geographical location, and some other things as well. So take a look at the Netlify docs for more information on that. Remembering also that you can generate your redirect configuration as a part of your build.